Hi, this is Jerry Reynolds for Sacramento Electronic Supply, who has been servicing the Sacramento area's industrial electronic needs for over 75 years. Family owned and operated, Sacramento Electronics is a registered California small business that prides themselves on their customer service. Their showroom and warehouse are open to the public to browse. Whether you're looking for wire and cable, tools and testers, connectors, or relays, Sacramento Electronics is open for you Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., directly south of Costco in Rancho Cordova, or hey, visit them online 24/7 at www.sacelec.com and do it. Oh, another rebound in a crowd by the Brock Nest Monster. Ooh, that would be deja vu. Jim Bob Foley, holy moly. How about the Tasmanian Slovenian with the stop, drop, and pop? Hippity hop to the Kings Herald Barbershop.
You're listening to the Kings Herald Show, a bi-weekly NBA podcast that covers all the ups and downs, ins and outs of your one and only Sacramento Kings. As always, I'm your host, Will Griffith, and with me today, writer for the Kings Herald, my co-host, Tony Zipteris. Tony, how's it going?
Will, the Kings are still playing a good, decent level of basketball, so I am good as well.
That is good to hear. Yeah. He's a former Sacramento Kings head coach, GM and color analyst, general manager of a WNBA champion, Indiana Basketball Hall of Famer, true pride of French Lick himself. It's Jerry Reynolds. Jerry, as always, an absolute pleasure to have you today. How's it going?
Well, it's great to be with you guys, and still, hey, I enjoy watching this team play. I just really get a kick out of them, and so everything's good with me.
Well, that's good to hear. So the Kings will reach the halfway point of their season this Friday, Friday the 13th, and so I figured it's about time we give our boys in purple a bit of a midway assessment. Just as an anchor point for our listeners, at the time of this recording, the Kings are currently 21-18. They are fifth in the Western Conference. And hey, they are first in the Pacific Division. We're going to go through the players, the coaches, management. But first, I wanted to get a view from 1,000 feet. So with all that in mind, guys, where would you judge the Kings franchise as a whole right now, essentially at the midpoint of the season?
Well, for me, to just the record's the record. And if somebody had told me that, basically at the midpoint, they'd have over 20 or more wins.
Yeah.
I'd have been thrilled to death. And I'd said, my God, having said that it's like anything. Once they get there, you think, boy, I wish they could have done a little better. They lost a couple games, but the reality is, I think they've certainly achieved more than we had any right to expect when this whole thing started.
Yeah, the record is undeniable and much better than I would have predicted. So it's like there's a lot of little details here and there that are frustrating or worse than I thought they would be, or aspects of the season that are going much better than I thought they would be. But once you kind of peel it all back and just look at the record, it's hard to to be a realistic Kings fan and not happy about how the Kings have performed standings wise, record wise to this point. I don't know what your expectations could be. So I'm fairly happy still. The team does have major issues, especially if you look over the last 10 games. They have the worst defense in the league right now, or I think it's second worst by defensive rating, but they're giving up the most points in the paint by a wide margin right now over the last 10 games. And their offense is still very, very good. I think it's third in the league over that same stretch. So they are kind of the best version of what we thought they'd be on offense, and at least lately kind of the worst version of what we thought they'd be on defense as well.
Yeah, that defense, it's just, I think the thing that disappoints me the most, and you guys might have a different thought on this, but, they're worse than they were when they started the season. And that really disappoints me. I was, call me an optimist or whatever you want, but I just assumed they would get better as the year went on, and they clearly are worse.
Sure. We'll jump right into this then. Jerry, just so that I can get a first half grade from each of you guys on this, what would you grade? We'll start with the team defense because that's what we're talking about. Where would you grade this first half of the season? The way the team defense has been for the Kings, their 25th right now in the league in opponent points per game at 117.1. They're 24th in defensive rating. Where do you guys grade the Kings in terms of their defense this first half of the season?
Well, for me, I'd have to give them a D, no better than a D. Might even be a D minus, but definitely a D because of really their ratings, number one, and the fact that they have not improved. And that was kind of the charge for the season when it started. So probably a D might be, a little over. I don't know.
Tony, what about you? Where do you see it?
Yeah, I think D is fair. It's frustrating that they've seemed to be getting worse, and I think get even more specific, I think their interior defense has been the biggest problem, and even more specific than that, I never thought a backup center was this valuable, but the Kings are making that spot seem so hard to fill and so valuable. You see the bench come in, and there are big guys rebounding over whoever the Kings put in there. Opposing bench units are attacking the paint, and they're attacking Sabonis too. But man, I never thought backup center would be such an important role. But this Kings team is really highlighting how rough the Kings have it behind Sabonis there.
Gary, do you feel like that's the difference? Just having a backup center that can rebound and block some shots. Do you think that that's enough to improve the Kings team defense, that it would be a difference maker? Or do you feel like it's more a systemic thing with Sabonis being your center or something, the guard play the way it's been playing? Where do you see the Kings improving in the second half of the season?
Well, Tony hit on. Sabonis is not a particularly good defender. He's going to give you great effort. He's not a shot blocker. But to me, that isn't the problem. The problem is the perimeter defense. If you're going to get beat off the dribble, whoever is back there to pick them up is in trouble. It may be a bigger guy who might block a shot occasionally. That doesn't even mean you'd get it back. But it's most likely just going to lead to fouls, which is what we see. I think it's the perimeter defense. They have got to do a better job of staying in front of, other than Davion, who stays in front of his man consistently. I think the answer is zero at this stage. And so, sure, a backup center would help. That's a good defender, would definitely help. Defensively might hurt you offensively. So there is that. But to me, with all of Sabonis's weaknesses, I think he's less of a problem than the perimeter.
Call me a little bit soft. I when I was going through these grades in my head before we started the podcast, I kind of internally gave the Kings a C minus for their defense, only because I'm trying to keep my expectations in check. The Kings are 41 games into Mike Brown's tenure, and last year the defense was historically bad. And part of me, as I was sitting there thinking about it today, I went, the Kings haven't been that bad on defense, but I think it's just because we're seeing a regular NBA level bad defense instead of historically bad defense. And so the fan brain in me, I've been trying to wrestle with that a little bit, where it's I want to give this kid a passing grade because I know he's struggling, but boy, is he working a lot harder than he was last year at it. And so I'm curious, Jerry, is this something that can be turned around in the next 41 games? Do you feel like this is something that has to be addressed with a trade internally? How do you see this winding up? If you could predict, maybe not predict, but if the Kings are going to be better in the second half of the season, how much is this going to be determined on a trade versus internal effort, things that need to be going on?
Well, I think, to answer your question as best I can, I think it can get better. It's going to be hard for it to get worse. They're the last 10 games, to be truthful, they've just been bad, really bad. So yes, can it get? I think it can get better with the current personnel. And maintain the high level of offensive efficiency, which is also true. But if you could make a trade to get somebody that makes you better, whether it's backup center or another wing defender type guy, I'm all in favor of both those things. But like I say, I think it has to start for this team. Team's a work in progress. This is not a finished product. And people, if they trade 5 guys and go get a young Akeem Olajuwon, they'll be a lot better. Well, yeah, but that's not going to happen. So this is, I think, generally speaking, this is who you've got, and you try to, and I'm sure Monty they'd like to improve it, but it's going to be around the edges. It's not going to be something major. So you better get better with the guys that are playing, and I see no reason why they can't. And I guess I'd say one other thing, my opinion is they need to play more zone. You're going to give up maybe some more threes, but if you could protect the basket better and keep teams from being able to play inside out is easy, I think they'd be better. I mean, not saying you play it, but really, honestly, play it probably 20, 25 minutes a game. People say, well, now there's a risk in that. I said, what would it be? What risk could there probably be there? I don't know.
Dropping to 30th in the NBA rather than a 29th right now. Over last
20. That's what I say. Sometimes there's not much risk.
Yeah. Tony, how do you feel about the Kings in the second half of the season in regards to their team defense?
I think it can get better. It should get better, and they've played better than they are right now. We're in a weird stretch right now. I know, like, we keep talking about this kind of 10-game group of games because that's kind of the cadence of our podcast. We record every other week. So the last 10 games have been exceptionally bad. They haven't been this bad all year. I do think they can get better. They should get better. But the alarming thing is I don't think this 10-game stretch has been that full of like prolific offensive teams either. It's not like they're playing great offensive teams and they're having a rough time on defense. They're having a rough time on defense playing some pretty middle of the road, middle of the pack offensive teams. So from that standpoint, it does seem like it wouldn't take a whole lot for Mike Brown to get these guys to be playing at least a little bit better than they are right now, because this recent stretch has been exceptionally bad for a team that is also already not a very good defensive team.
Okay, so we're going to move on to something that I actually like talking about when it comes to the Kings, their offense. So the Kings are currently first in the NBA in points per game at 118.8 a contest. They are third in the NBA in terms of their offensive rating. They're third in pace. They're running faster than they have in a long time. What would you guys give as grades? And then maybe another second half bump to bump their grades if it's not an A++++. What you'd like to see in the second half with the Kings?
Well, for me, I'd give them an A. I mean, I think they're good at what they do. They're fun. They're totally unselfish. The players are who they are. You're not talking about the championship team here, but it is almost a championship offense. And I'd give them an A. And what could they do a little better? I still think, and I know, this is the old man get off my lawn type thing, but I would like to see some set plays down the stretch of games more. When it gets in, I mean, obviously Fox is great in open court or even giving him some space to ISO. And I got no problem with a lot of that. But at some point, just a need play, get a little structure to your offense, not just hoping the defense gives you something. So, that would be just a minor thing, but I think it might help you win a game.
Tony, what about you? How do you feel about this first half team's offense?
Yeah. So Jerry mentioned being excited to watch this team play, and I feel the exact same way. And it's 100% because of the offense. The offense is so fun, and the numbers look great too, but it's also just a fun offense to watch. I love this starting lineup together. They play really smart, good basketball. And it is scary in a good way that I do think there is still some room for improvement. You've got two players in Kevin Huerter and Keegan Murray, who are shooting very well from three, but you've also got a lot of pretty good 3-point shooters on this roster that aren't shooting that well. So I do think there's some room for improvement for some better 3-point shooting from your role guys. And another player who I think has been a huge disappointment on offense, and I think there's reasons why he has been this way, but Davion Mitchell's offense, for as good as his defense has been, and I love his defense, he's one of my favorite players on this roster, his offense has been non-existent for so many games. I looked up this before we started recording because I was just curious. He's only scored in double figures 3 times all season, and he's played in 38 games, something like that. That's crazy for your backup point guard, your backup primary ball handler. I know Malik Monk handles the ball a ton off the bench, but still, for Davion Mitchell, a second-year guard who you want more offense out of, to only have 3 double-digit games is tough. So that's one player who, if I could pick anyone on the roster to have a better second half offensively, it would be Davion for me. He's got to pick it up there, and I think he can.
Yeah, Davion's one of those guys that, to me, he's got to improve it as a mid-range shooter. Right now he'll spot up from 3 or try to get all the way to basket. And he's never going to be highly successful until he really develops a floater, the mid-range escape dribble kind of thing. And that's a process, but I don't know why he can't get there, with his work ethic and everything. But I agree with you, Tony. I mean, he's just not good enough offensively right now, and he needs to find a way to be better offensively and kind of look for his own shot a little bit more.
Gary, you've been pretty high on Davion in the past. Do you feel like that's all it is, that he needs to hunt his shot a little bit more, or do you feel like this is a product of the offense where Malik Monk kind of draws so much of the offense for himself? Where do you feel like this is between Davion and the bench, and why he isn't scoring as much as he probably should be at his age and his tenure in the league?
Well, yeah, I honestly think it's a couple of things. Obviously sporadic minutes, so to speak. That's always tougher to get an offensive rhythm going. I mean, Monk does because he's hunting shots.
Yes.
And so, but Davion isn't. And so, but that's fine. But I think too, I think Davion, it seems to me, he goes into games to affect the team defensively. And I think maybe at the fault of his offense to understand, you can affect the team offense too by, not necessarily always getting a shot, but getting into that mid area, drawing people to you for the easy. He doesn't do that enough. I mean, Monk does that a lot and has been very successful at that. So those small things, but I wouldn't throw him overboard here. I mean, for a team that doesn't play defense, with the 2 guys that do, he and KZ, but and they both neither one affect the game offensively at all.
Well, let's roll through. We've kind of talked about Davion already. I want to roll through at least the starting 5 for the Kings and get your guys' opinions on them. We'll start with Fox. How do you guys feel like Fox has done in the first half of the season? You can give a grade, and then follow that up with something that they can do to bump it up even higher if you want.
Well, I give Fox an A, and probably the only thing I'd ask is that he played defense a little better. I mean, we've seen signs of it being better, and I think it is. But I guess my criticism of him would be, and I don't know if it's him or even the coaching staff, but he should be picking up before the mid-court line. I mean, get up into guys, and really don't. He can make guys uncomfortable, and Davion does. He can with his quickness and length, and like I say, we see it. We see periodically, but not consistently enough. So that would be my only real criticism. I think his numbers are very good. We see how good he is in the fourth quarter, able to get his shot probably better than any King that they've ever had. Almost going back to Tiny Archibald or something. I mean, he's really good at that, but needs to be. He should be a little more of an impact on the defensive side. We're not just out there, but actually get more steals, really, just have a real impact. And without, it wouldn't take the way Coach Brown's playing him. He gives him pretty good breaks. So anyway, that'd be my thought there. But he is having an all-star level year. Whether he's an all-star or not, I don't know. But I think, I think the fans, I mean, a lot of people like myself who have been very critical of Fox, it's time to be fair to Fox. I mean, I think he's made real strides.
I guess I'll be a tiny bit nitpicky and go A-, even though for mostly for defensive reasons, which Jerry kind of laid out. I do think there are things with his shot that were very encouraging earlier in the year, his 3-point shot, that have sort of tailed off and become kind of the same old sketchy shooter that he's been his whole career, that you'd like to see get better if possible. One thing I love about Fox is he turned himself into a very good free throw shooter. 80% from the free throw line as a guy who gets the line a lot is a big, important and good improvement for him. So I guess the A- here is mostly because I still think there's room for him to get better. I don't think he's ever played as good as he played, for instance, like he was playing towards the end of last season. So there is one more gear here for Fox that he could hit. And if he does, that's awesome. If he doesn't, he's still having a very, very good year. The best of his career for sure. If you're taking like the first half of a season for him, this is the best first half he's had that I could remember.
Now, what about we're going to move on to Domantas Sabonis now. Jerry, what do you feel? How do you feel about Sabonis's first half of the season?
A+ probably. I mean, lead the league in rebounding. He's scoring not just 18 points a game, but he's doing it, getting about 1.7 points a shot, which is better than Michael Jordan did. So if you got any, I mean, it's hard to complain about that. The damn guy's even making a high percentage of his threes. So as assists, I mean, he's the best passing bigs next to Jokic in the league. So there's that. So yeah, he's clearly an all-star. Yeah. And I think the thing, one of the reasons I love watching him play, because he plays so hard. Yeah. I mean, his stamina is just remarkable. I think. I don't know. The Kings have never had a big like that. And I've watched him from the Kansas City days. I mean, really, that just simply, he's playing way above his actual ability. Whereas Cousins or Weber were more talented, but they didn't play nearly up to the ability, in my opinion, like he does. So yeah. A+, for that guy, and plays hurt, which in today's NBA is really, he's kind of a freak, I guess, nowadays, if you actually play hurt.
Yeah. Tony, what do you think about the freak? How do you feel like he's performed in this first half?
I'll go ahead and give Sabonis an A+ from me. He's somehow, and I didn't pull the numbers here, but I know I looked at it earlier on in his process. He's been better since he got hurt. Like, he just keeps going. Impacted his game at all. His numbers are insane. He's shooting 41% from three, which is crazy. It's only 1.2 attempts, but I mean, what else can this guy do for you? He's got defensive limitations that we've talked about, but unlike Fox, I feel like we know what Sabonis' ceiling is on defense, and you could argue that he's kind of hitting it, whereas Fox sort of has room to grow there. So Sabonis is doing, to me, everything you could possibly expect from a player, and showing a bunch of leadership qualities too, which is something the team needs. And leading by example, like Jerry said, leading with toughness too. He gives the Kings an edge, a guy that opposing teams don't want to have to bump up against for 40 minutes, which is something they haven't had since Cousins, like that real physical presence that you've got to fight the entire time he's on the court. So I love what Sabonis has done this year. He's had a great first half. I just hope he remains healthy, because every game, I started counting this. Every game he's getting hit in the face or knocked on the floor or hurt in some type of new way. So I'm just crossing my fingers that he holds up for the rest of the year, because he is together an all-star year. And it's unlike Fox, if Sabonis doesn't make it, it's a legitimate sub, and Kings fans should be very upset, where Fox is right on the line. Maybe he'll make it, maybe he won't, but Sabonis should be in there.
Yeah. Two things too, I thought, with Sabonis, just listening to the broadcast and stuff, they always talk about how much he gets hit, which he does. Yeah. And it's true. What they don't talk about, and which I like, I mean, he is hurting guys.
Yeah.
I mean, he is kabonging guys. So, so it, I mean, my goodness, you can see guys they don't like playing against him, so that, and I don't know that I've ever seen, I mean, certainly he would qualify as about as unselfish as any good player I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, to a fault at times, he passes out where he probably ought to be looking for his own offense. But yeah, remarkable half year.
Tony, I'm curious, only because I don't have the numbers. What are his hits in the face per 36 minutes versus his hits people in the face per 36 minutes?
I will tell you at the end of the year. I have to go back to because I only started like 2 months in. I want to go back and catch all the times he got hit in the face the first 2 months. It's a lot. No exaggeration. It's literally every game where he's like doing this, like touching his eye, checking for blood on his face. It happens every night.
Okay, so let's move on now to Red Velvet there. How do you guys feel Kevin Huerter has played in the first half of the season?
I'd give him a B. He is a little better than I thought he would be. He's showing you a little more game than I thought he had. Obviously, a big time shot maker, really no fear. He's got a little toughness to him. His body, can't always back it up. But I mean, he plays pretty tough. So yeah, he's he was a key guy on an Eastern Conference finalist, and you see why. He's part of the solution, not part of the problem.
And what are you looking for him to do better in the second half of the season, Jerry?
Defense. Defense. I really think that's it. He doesn't keep his man in front of him very well either. And I don't think it's a lack of effort, but it's a lack of really understanding this is the most important thing you can do is keep him out of the paint. And I think with the wings, it's like, guys, if they want to move the ball around the edges, that's fine. Just let them dribble around the edge, pass around the edge, but straight ahead, please no.
I'll go a little higher than Jerry on Herter. I have him at about like an A-, B+ as well, just for my expectations. Like I liked the move a lot when McNair made it. I thought it was a great trade. Now it looks like I don't know, one of the better trades the Kings have ever made to me. When you consider he's only 24 years old, he's under contract for a while, at a very beyond fair / bargain number. He is mostly just a 3-point shooter for this team on offense with some creation, but he's really their volume 3-point shooter. And I think he's playing that role as good as anyone in the league is. Like most good teams have that one guy who is the shooter for your team. The Kings run plays for him. He delivers way more often than not when they need him to. So for what his role is, I can't imagine him doing much better than he is right now. So I'll give him an A- for that. And one random area for improvement is his free throw shooting. It's still just not at the level that I would think Kevin Herter could shoot from free throws. And he's only getting to line 2 times a game, but it is bizarre that he's only shooting like 73% from the free throw line when he is historically like an 80% free throw shooter, but also just a incredible shooter in general that you would think he could hit his free throws at a better rate than that.
Yeah, I guess I would judge Kevin Herter's first half of the season. You could base it solely just based on like how Atlanta Hawks fans see him now. And like, Jerry, I don't know if you heard anything about this, but there's a subreddit, there's a website that they're all Hawks fans, and they've turned themselves into a Kings specific website specifically because of Kevin Herter and Kevin Herter's play. Like, they're so upset with the way the Hawks have played that they've changed their name to like the Sacramento. I don't even remember what they called themselves, but like they are so on board. They're so annoyed by Kevin Herter being a Sacramento King that they've changed themselves to a Kings specific subreddit online because of how annoyed they've been with how good he's been since the trade. So, I mean, I agree with you guys. He's had a fantastic season, and I can judge that solely based on the other fan base that had him is pissed he's not there anymore.
Yeah. I mean, they're not as good without him, and I don't know if that's all of it, but I mean, I think probably has maybe more to do with their number one guy. But certainly they're not as good, and that's a fact.
Yeah, absolutely right on that one. Okay, so we're going to get to our vet for this team, Harrison Barnes. How do you guys feel about Harrison Barnes' first half of the season?
I would give him a B. I would have probably given him a C- or D early. Yeah. But when you look at the stats and how he's playing the late. I mean, he's been Harrison Barnes, guy you can count on. He's never going to be, an all-star type guy, but he's a really good player. I was hoping that the Kings would be good enough to where he'd be the maybe 5th best player. But he's been too good to say that because he's certainly better than Keegan and probably more valuable really than Herter or Monk at this stage. I think. I don't know that he's as good as potentially as either one. But so I'd give him a solid B. He's a solid player.
Tony, what about you? How do you feel about a Harrison Barnes coming into the second half of the season now?
I think he's trending in the right direction. I'd still give him C. that maybe a harsh grade, but the 3-point shooting hasn't been there, which is really strange for him because he has been a very good 3-point shooter for a long time and a very good 3-point shooter here. Maybe I'm grading him a little harshly because I don't think the Kings need more from a defender in the paint. And if it's not going to be Sabonis, it's also not going to be Harrison Barnes, which is kind of unfair to Barnes, I guess. And it's not going to be Keegan Murray. So, and Sabonis isn't going anywhere. So you need better defense from one of those front court players. And Harrison Barnes probably just isn't capable of providing the Kings what they need there. So the fit at times hasn't been my favorite thing in the world. The 3-point shooting hasn't always been there. I do think he is still playing an important role, though, and making important buckets. He's getting to the free throw line a ton. So it hasn't all been bad. I'm not all negative on it, but I just, he's one player. If you talk about guys who could be better in the second half, I think Harrison Barnes would be maybe at the top of my list as far as just being a more complete, better player in the second half of the season.
Yeah, it's incredible to me as somebody who's a skeptic and generally a Kings curmudgeon about certain things. The Kings are playing as well as they are, and like guys like Harrison Barnes, who I'm probably one of the more skeptical people about Harrison Barnes since he's come over. I've had to like begrudgingly be like, okay, yeah, don't trade Harrison Barnes. And like, yeah, okay, Harrison Barnes had a good game. Harrison Barnes scored 30 last night, and I had to uncross my arms and cheer for him a little bit. And like, that's a difficult thing for me to do at times. And he's done a very good job more this season than seasons past. The first maybe 10 games of the season, it was like, I was off. I was never on the train, but I had left the Harrison Barnes station. I was walking away from Harrison Barnes County, headed towards someplace else. And he's done enough in the remaining games for me to be like, okay, keep the guy if you really need to keep him. And I'm that to me is enough to be like, all right, he's done a fairly good job. I'll give him a B just based solely on the fact that like he's made me a bit of a Harrison Barnes believer, even with being Harrison Barnes and disappearing certain games and disappearing on the defensive end more often than not. He's done his job, and I appreciate him. And I'm going to shut up about Harrison Barnes because that's all I can say that's nice about him. No, I like Harrison Barnes. He seems like a nice guy. I just
yeah, well, he is. He's obviously a real classy pro, but I do think one thing that hurts Harrison is just it's not how he plays all the time. It's how he looks like he's playing. He's one of those guys that doesn't make a big deal and, phony emotionalism and this, that, and the other. And you can't tell whether he's getting 30 or 10. And I mean, and I don't know that that's a weakness, but I think with some fans, we're accustomed to somebody pound their chest and look into the sky or something, and that's not who he is.
Yeah, he's a nice vet to have on this team. I wish he was the 5th best guy. He's probably the 3.5 best guy on this team, but I'm glad he's on this team. So, okay, we're gonna roll over to the rookie. You can grade him as a rookie. You can grade him as a starting member on a playoff caliber team. You guys grade him however you want to. How do you guys feel like Keegan Murray has done in the first half of the season?
Well, as a rookie, I would probably give him a B. As a veteran, or not as a just play, I'd give him a C-. But he just isn't doing enough. I mean, he's established that he can really make the three ball. Okay, he's getting better at actually with instinctual defense. I like a few things he does there. He actually kind of anticipates some passes occasionally. Now we see he'll block a shot. You see some things, but not near enough. He can go. I mean, so-called power forward, he can go 25 minutes and get 0 rebounds, and that's or 1. And I mean, I do understand that Sabonis is kind of a vacuum in there, and that makes it a little tougher. But he's got to do better rebounding. Willie, my sense is, and I'll just say this: he's not a power forward. He may be someday. He's a small forward, and at some point that will be going forward as they try to build this team. Whether you keep Harrison Barnes or not, that will be Keegan's position, and then if you could keep Harrison as a backup 3-4, you'd be, you might got to have a chance to be better. But that's my opinion. I mean, I think in a couple of years he can be much better than Harrison. But so anyway, I like how he plays. He's obviously a good kid. Should he have been drafted where he was? I don't know why not. Is he is he going to be the fourth best guy overall? I don't know, but he's going to be near that. And he fits well with the Fox and Sabonis, and that's very important too.
On the rookie scale, I'll give him a C plus. Jerry said it, his shooting is legit, which is important for this team. Fox and Sabonis, to have your fifth starter be a 40% 3-point shooter is pretty good. Like that's a pretty good offensive contribution. He's doing nothing one-on-one. We're not really seeing a lot of his other scoring skills. It's really all shooting and the occasional cut and dunk or something like that. But we're not seeing a lot of offensive skill from him outside of the shot. Defense has been up and down. And like Jerry said, the rebounding is pretty bad on a lot of nights. He's got two games in the last 5 with just 0 rebounds, playing 30 minutes a night, which almost seems impossible to get no rebounds when you're playing that many minutes. I honestly don't even know why that's happening. It's such a bizarre number for a forward to have 0 rebounds in that amount of minutes. So he's got to get better in plenty of areas. And unlike some rookies the Kings have had, I have some amount of faith that Keegan Murray will get better at a lot of those areas. So I'm pretty optimistic, even though C+ is maybe not the grade we would have hoped to give him at this stage of the season. But I'm pretty happy with Keegan overall, I would say.
Okay, now we're going to group this one all into one. You guys can point out specific people if you want to. You guys can grade them as a group. You're adults. I'll let you pick. How do you feel like the bench as a whole or individuals has done this in the first half of the season? And what do you feel like they need to step up and do in the second half of the season to bump their grade up?
Well, I'm kind of been on record on different places of saying there's 3 things the Kings have to do every night to win, and that is make threes at a winning percentage, have a better than a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, and the bench to outperform the other team's bench. And a lot of nights early, the bench was better than the other team's bench. Lately, it hasn't been. And so I guess my criticism would be get back to being better what you were. Now, a lot of that is Monk, because he just kind of made the bench mob a little better, and he hasn't been as good. And then, of course, just no idea of who's going to be the backup center, and whether, Metu might be the best choice, and that's, whatever. But so, yeah, I'd say I'd have given the bench an A after the first 20 games, and I'm probably going to give them a B- right now.
Tony, how do you feel like the bench has done in this first half?
I'll give them a C+. I think there's 3 players on this bench that we know are going to play every night. Davion Mitchell, Malik Monk, and Trey Lyles, to me, are the 3 guys that kind of set themselves apart as being consistent rotation guys. And then everyone else in that bench unit, I don't know. I don't know how Mike Brown can figure out who's going to contribute on one night to the next. We just went off a run where Rashawn Holmes finally got playing time again, and he was very bad. Which is super disappointing. Metu plays against Orlando and looks good, so maybe he's the answer there. We already talked about Davion Mitchell, so there's room for improvement. But there's just a lot of inconsistency from the bench right now, and it's if you can't rely on that, it's hard to feel super good about it, because on any given night they could be good or bad, and that's not a comfortable place to be. So C+ for now, but I think if Monty McNair will address anything at the deadline, it will be some bench pieces. So I still like enough of that group where you get a piece in or 2 and you might fix the holes. It's not a huge problem that can't be fixed with some minor moves at the deadline, I think.
I sure agree with that, Tony. I really like the idea. To me, I kind of wish Trey Lyles would get more consistent minutes, and maybe at the 5 as well. Yeah. I just think, not that, to me, he's just a better basketball player than Metu, and he's more physical. And so, and he can, well, anyway, I just think it, when you don't really have what you need, whatever strengths you have with bench players, try to figure out how to get the ones that can help you a little more time. And so that's kind of where I'd see that.
Yeah, I'm curious. So this is a sidetrack just slightly, but it's been on my mind for a little bit. The Kings have Alex Len sitting there. They started him for a single game going up against Nikola Jokic, and then he's kind of just disappeared again. He's averaging 4 minutes a game in the 10 games he's played, basically. Why do you think the Kings don't, at least they've tried everybody else at center coming off the bench? Why haven't they used Alex Len? Why haven't they utilized Alex Len in a couple of those opportunities?
Well, I really don't have the answer for that. I mean, I would have said at the start of the year that he might be the best choice for backup center because of his length and ability to do some things around defensively that Sabonis can't. And he can still kind of he can make a shot out on the floor as well as a pretty good ball mover and screener. So it would seem to be, maybe, and if you watched his career, we're not talking about stuff he hadn't done. Sure. But it just seemed like that he was never in the picture at the start of the year, and it's going to be pretty hard to get him in the picture now, I think. So, it's the bottom line is Metu and Lyles and Len and Rashawn. You got 4 guys that none of them fit exactly what you want. Yeah. And so, and that's what I can feel for Mike Brown. People say, well, I don't need to do this. Well, I don't know. I mean, he's searching. That's the bottom line. He's not comfortable with any of them. And I get that, but that's kind of why I say I would go with Lyles, because I think to me, he's got the best chance of being a 15-20 minute guy. that's all I got there. I mean, I can't give you a good reason other than that's what I think.
Okay, so we're gonna head more into not necessarily a single person, but I'm curious at what you guys think how the coaching has been in the first half of the season so far this year.
Well, I think the coaching has been outstanding. I mean, I'm disappointed in the defense because that was what Mike Brown was brought in to do. And, especially when we saw the improvement early. Sure. And how it slipped late. So, so I'd probably give him a B+ right now as opposed to an A+, which I would have, 20 games ago. But I think it's all on defense. But then again, I mean, the guy's had the experience. He knows the team isn't playing good defense, and hopefully he and his staff could figure out a way to, make it a little better.
I'm very happy with Mike Brown. I'd probably give him a B+ too, mostly for the defense. But I think outside of the on-court stuff, and Jerry can maybe speak to this better than we can. I don't know how much a coach has to do with setting a tone and a culture, but this is the best the Kings have had in those terms in, 16 years. Just the buy-in, the playing hard every night. We haven't really questioned effort at all with this team. And I can't remember the last time there was a Kings team where we weren't doing some of that questioning on the podcast or on Twitter or anywhere else. So the culture building parts of what Mike Brown and his staff have brought to this team, I would give that aspect an A+. And that was such a huge component the Kings needed to get right with this hire. And Mike Brown seems to be the right guy for the right job on the right team. So I'm very happy with him. Defense is the only concern, but overall, Mike Brown has had a really, really good season.
And really too, to his pluses, I think he's great with the media, yes. Press conferences. I think he's terrific, and he may be the best Kings have ever had, in that regard, because Rick Allen wasn't any good at all. he'd rather take somebody jab him in the eye before you do a press conference. But coaching's coaching. But this guy, I think, does check a lot of boxes, and I think ultimately to whether he can get back to being an A+, like I'm hoping he can. It improved the defense the second half of the year.
All right, our last Kings related question. How do you guys feel management has done in the first half of the season, and what do you think they need to improve on in the second half of the season to bump their grade up a little bit?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about Monty and his staff, I'd give them an A, a solid A at least, because I think certainly going back to what I said earlier, I didn't think this team would be playing at a 42 or 3 win, 44 win pace. And so they've overachieved from what I thought. His pickups, obviously his draft pick is good. We'd like for him to do more, but I think most of us are happy with him. Herder and Monk, excellent pickups. And of course, going back to, trade last year to bring in Sabonis, that's worked very well. Certainly, before anybody screams at me, yes, Halliburton's terrific, and I like him, and I think he's going to be a several-time All-Star in Indiana. But this team is better with the guy they got, I think, and Indiana's better with the guy they got. so there's that. But anyway, I think Monty has done an outstanding job. I like where there's not a lot of rumors floating around.
True.
About what Sacramento's doing, and that shows he's running a tight ship. And I learned from Jeff Petrie about that. You keep things in hand. Doesn't mean they won't get out, but just not from you. And I think McNair has proven when you hear rumors about the Kings, it's not coming from him.
Yeah, we've done a lot, or at least I'll speak for myself, a lot of criticizing of McNair for years, and I will give him his flowers now. He's had a great, dating back to the last year's trade deadline to now, the turnaround has been almost miraculous. Like we've said it all year. No one expected them to be this good. They still have a second half of the season to finish up, so we'll see how it closes. But to this point, McNair has pushed so many of the right buttons, and we just talked about Mike Brown. That's maybe the biggest one too, is just hiring the right coach. When there was a lot of some candidates that seemed a lot worse than Mike Brown, and landing on that guy and having seen the impact he's bringing, the Herder trade, the Sabonis trade, Keegan Murray, whether he was the right pick or not for that spot, or whether he's going to be the best player at that spot, he's a perfect fit for what they have here. Monk was a great move. I guess not signing DiVincenzo was the right move too, if you consider who they got. They got Monk instead, which is an upgrade to me and a better fit there too. So Monte McNair has on a nice run of really, really good moves, and he's got another few big ones probably to make in the next month before the deadline. But so far with McNair this year, it's been very good.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things that I mentioned in the offseason that I felt like the Kings needed to hit a home run with the coaching, a home run in their trades, a home run in the draft, and a home run in free agency in order to just sniff the playoffs. And I think the way I said it is like, everything was kind of like a double this offseason. And like suddenly like Mike Brown is a home run. There might have been a man on base on top of it. And I think that, the Kevin Herter trade has turned out better than what I expected. Malik Monk has been better than what I expected. And like, there might be a couple of home runs and a few triples in there, if not home runs themselves. And I'm happy to eat a little bit of crow about it too. I mean, I'll always root for the Kings. It'll be one of those things that I'm happy to look stupid because I'm a Kings fan, and they've made me look stupid plenty of times in my life. Just the opposite reason, not usually, mostly because I'm too positive instead of too negative. But McNair's one of those people who just, I had to completely rethink Operation McNair, our donation drive in the offseason, just because I went, these guys might be sniffing a playoff spot. And that's enough for me to be like, yeah, okay, Monty, you did a great job. I'm sure he's expecting in writing at some point or another, something from Tim, something from Richard Ivanowski. I'm sure he'd love to read some apology letters from all of us, and he might just get that in the offseason this year if the Kings make the playoffs. But that management group's done a very, very good job, and I'm happy to be rooting for a Kings team that makes me look dumb, and this time in a positive direction, not in a negative one. Okay.
Well, I'm an expert in that. I'm an expert in the Kings making me look dumb. And the fact is, I did some of it on my own, so can't blame them for everything.
Jerry, they paid you for that privilege, though. I did it for free.
Yeah, they did. That was a good part of it, being dumb and getting paid,
Okay, so now we're going to roll through. The NBA released their midseason media report. It's a media survey where they basically ask questions to a media member from each team in the league, quiz them on all sorts of stuff, had them make predictions and everything else like that. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on a couple of these questions before we run on to the commercial break. All right, so first question, and I've got all the answers, or I've got all the the percentages here of what everybody voted. So I won't be taking place. I don't want to cheat here. So gentlemen, I'll ask you guys, in your opinion, which team in the NBA is poised to make a big second half run?
Well, probably the Warriors, in my opinion. Obviously they're a 500 team, and I think they're better than that. And so I would say they're definitely a team that would and should make a big run. You could also say the same about the Suns, but but I think they're a little more disjointed. But then again, Booker comes back and all of a sudden a lot of their offensive problems are solved. So those are two teams that clearly are not playing at the level that they're capable of and have proven to be capable of. So off the top of my head, that'd be probably the two that I see the most.
I'd take the Suns here too, but since Jerry took them, and this is weird. I don't even really believe in this team. I do think the Hawks are better than they're playing. So I don't know how much higher they're going to get, but that should to me be a playoff team. And right now they're fighting for a play-in spot. And I just think they got too much talent on that roster to not be better than that at some point.
So I'll just to read off here, just to give somebody some some of these listeners a context. Golden State was 43% of their answers, and the Suns were not on. They were not listed at all, which surprised me, Jerry, because when I read that question, I thought, oh, the Suns will be one of those teams.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see here. Let me scroll. What has been the most surprising storyline of the season for you guys?
Well, it might be to me just the drama of the Brooklyn Nets. It's they started off being totally disjointed, and whether it's Kyrie stuff or whatever, and really up till just the other day when Durant gets hurt, they're the best team in the league. They were playing, they had the Simmons drama, the Kyrie drama, just everything going on there. And you just said, well, they're not going to get it together, and damn if they didn't. And so to me, it's the Brooklyn Nets, it's like definitely a mid-afternoon drama, for the, rest
days of our nets.
Days of our nets. Yeah, that's it.
Tony, what about you? Who do you feel like has been the most surprising storyline of the season?
I'm playing the home team. I'm going to go with the Kings. When you go from 16 years out of the playoffs to one game back from hosting a playoff series, that's a crazy improvement. And yes, we are a Kings podcast, so there's a homer aspect to that, but I'm seeing that in the national media too. People excited about the Kings, surprised about the Kings, talking about the Kings. Kevin Herter was just on, I think it was the Low Post this week. So they're getting the attention that they deserve. And to me, that's a surprise. I didn't think they'd be this good this soon, this early.
You guys nailed 1 and 2 on that one. Brooklyn's bounce back was 20%, the high point of that. And Sacramento's ascension was 17%. So you guys are ringers. You guys are good at this.
Boy, damn.
I'll take it.
Okay. Based on what you've seen so far, which team made the best overall personnel moves this last summer?
Well, I kind of think, that's a tough one because until it's all done. But I like what Cleveland did. Obviously gave up a lot to get Donovan Mitchell, but he gives them a lot. When he scores 71, that's pretty good. But I mean, I don't, and I think he's made them better, whether they're, if they can get healthy, they could be a threat in the East. So I sure like what they did. I'm trying to think of some other teams' moves, other than this going into this season that shocks me one way or another. And I can't say, yeah. I mean, probably Portland getting Grant's another good one. That's certainly been a big help. And then the third I would just throw out there is New York getting Brunson, because he's been a terrific addition, which I'm not surprised. I think Dallas really screwed the pooch on that one.
I think Boston did some good minor things. They're also just a very good team. Kings, I would mention the Kings again. And I would say, I was kind of thinking of the reverse of this question, or who made like the worst moves of the year. And I would definitely go with the Timberwolves there. So kind of the reverse of that is Utah. Yes, they lost Mitchell and they traded Gobert, but the return they got to still be a pretty decent basketball team is I don't know. That's some Danny Ainge wizardry right there.
Well, I tell you what, I just want to say too, Laurie Marketing, there again, is why you need to have patience. For those of you all of us that want to see more from Keegan Murray, Laurie, as a rookie in Chicago, kind of a big, soft jump shooter, got better, a couple of years, and they just, that sort of thing. And that damn guy is a huge, he is terrific.
Yeah.
That's a major star in the making, Dirk Nowitzki that can actually play off the dribble better. Yeah. I don't know if he's going to be Dirk, but I'm just saying that they got like you say, Dan, they got a major star to build around.
Danny Ainge was one of those people that he's become more of a joke in recent years, almost with the Celtics those last couple of years, where it's like, oh, he almost made a move. Oh, he almost made a move. And oh, he almost traded for this and almost traded for that. That like when he pulled off a couple of those moves in Utah, I was like, all right, well, they're resetting. Good for Danny Ainge finally making a trade. And now nobody's laughing at Danny Ainge anymore right now. Like that meme has kind of died pretty quick because they're a really good young team and they have a million draft picks to go along with it. So good for Danny Ainge.
Yeah, and even selecting the coach, I was really surprised and said, I don't know. And then I should have known because Danny knows him. And he looks like a terrific young coach. And a lot of things going right in Utah. I know they've started to lose some games, but I still say they're definitely on the right track with what they've done. And I agree with Tony totally. The Minnesota thing, I just don't think they are. They're playing better now, but part of it, Karl Anthony Towns is out. So when he comes back, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, you guys called 1 and 2 again. Cleveland was number 1 at 67%. Utah number 2 at 10%. So you're killing it. Which rookie was the biggest steal related to where he was selected in the 2022 draft?
Well, for me, it's Mathurin at Indiana. Now it was a high pick, 6. But if that was over, he'd be a top 3 pick. Yeah. I think. He's right now. I other than Banchero, I think he's the best rookie in the league.
Yeah, I was going to go with Mathurin too. He seems to be a really good fit there. And he, a lot like Keegan, only, I guess, better. He's crushed every test they put in front of him. But he was awesome in Summer League. He's playing well now. And I think, what was he, 6th overall?
Yeah.
That's probably pretty good value for where he went.
It is one of those things I'll be interested because they would like to move Buddy and they should. He needs to have a bigger role. The only question I think, I know some people, there involved in, and they do have some, some concerns about his, I don't know how you say, selfishness or he's got his own gig going maybe to a fault. And so as opposed to where, obviously Keegan, they're in a selfish bone in his body. So we'll see, but I you got to love his talent. That's what we're talking about.
He definitely has a little like a Ben Gordon energy to me, where it's just like you get him in the game, he's going to start taking some shots as soon as that ball's touching his hand, that leather's headed towards the net. So according to the media survey, number 1 this time was Andrew Nembhard with Indiana, who was the 31st pick, he's playing great as a rookie.
Playing great, yeah.
And 2 was Walker Kessler in Utah, who's also playing fantastic over there in Utah for them.
Yeah. For where they were taken, those are real steals. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, one of the questions here that they ask is, who has been the best point guard this season?
Well, it's hard. I really think it might be Halliburton. It's a half a year, but his assist turnover ratio is terrific. Teams winning, his stats are good right across the board. And like I say, on a winning team, a fairly young team. So I mean, Lillard when he's playing, still terrific. You got some other. I mean, Garland had a terrific year as well. He's always been good, but I think he's stepped it up a notch. Brunson, but yeah, I'll stay with Halliburton.
Yeah, as far as traditional point guards go, I think of Halliburton because he's the kind of point guard that I'm used to. But the NBA is so weird now that, I mean, Luka is basically a point guard. Jokic is basically a point guard at times. As weird as that is to say, Sabonis plays that role for the Kings at times. So there's a lot of guys who could make claim as, I guess, the best table setter for their offense, if that's what we want to call the point guard. But traditional pure point guard wise, Halliburton has been obviously very good.
Yeah, that's the thing with Luka. He's clearly a truly great player, but I see him more as a scorer who can make plays, and he does. Somebody's asked me on another podcast some time ago, if there's anybody that he reminds me of, and I say the only one I can come honestly, and this would show you how old I am, it's Oscar Robertson. Now, how Oscar totally controlled the game, and he got the same criticism. He's got the ball too much. He controls everything, but Oscar played with nobody and dominated, and of course, in that day, it was just the opposite. Instead of looking for 3-point shots, Oscar was like, I'll get to 8 foot if that's the shot I want, but he totally, it was a ball dominant thing at a high productive rate. And, and I think Luka, that's about the highest praise I can give him, but I think he's, that would be a reasonably fair comparison. I don't think there is in the game today.
I asked that one specifically only because Luka Doncic was number one at 80% of the vote. He was considered a point guard. He was also third in the voting at small forward as well, which is kind of funny because But Halliburton was number 4 at 3%. The other two in between were Curry and Morant.
Well, the other thing there, and Morant's obviously good, but it's like LeBron. That's what he is.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said, "Oh, he's not a point." Of course he is. He has the ball all the damn time. I don't know why he isn't. And he's good. In years past, he was even better than he is now. As far as creating shots for others. But anyway, so yeah, it's just kind of how you look at it, Tony. It's right. I was thinking more of a pure playmaker, Chris Paul type, John Stockton type. That's my idea of a point guard, and Magic Johnson. But in today's game, it's right. You could call Steph Curry one. I don't. He can do it, but I don't know that his main role is playmaking.
I will say all three of us are old fogies then, because when I read that question, I had a bunch of point guards in my head, and Luka, I always he's a small forward who can distribute the ball. I don't see him as a point guard necessarily. So we're all old, and all the media are young, I guess.
Yep, they're wrong.
Yeah. So who is the best international player in the league?
Woo. That's really the tough one. I've always said, and I still think, that Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best player in the NBA. Yep. And so I'd have to go there. Jokic can do more. He's more skilled, but he's also not near the defender. And Giannis led a team to a championship, not a particularly talented team to a championship. And so I'll still go with Giannis, I think, because I still think if you started a franchise, 30 general managers would pick him as their first guy. I really believe that. And Jokic, Embiid. That's the thing. Right now, probably most of the top level players, Doncic, American-born players are kind of secondary now among the elites.
I was going to say the same thing, Jerry. I think, I would put, if you can give me, if Giannis is an option for any basketball question, that's what I'm taking. So I'll take Giannis first. But between Giannis, Jokic, and Luka, I don't know, that might be the 3 best players in the league, and they're all international guys. And I guess you probably throw Durant in there as like the top 4, and maybe I'm forgetting someone, but it is pretty cool and also wild that those 3 super dominant players all just happen to be international players.
Yeah, you guys nailed all 3. It's they voted Jokic as number 1, which I think they're wrong on that one. I think certainly Antetokounmpo. Giannis is number 2, and Luka was number 3. And they split that vote pretty evenly. It was 38, 34, and 28%.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. I mean, I get that. I mean, it's too close to call. You're just judging greatness, a different level, and all 3 play so different.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see here. We've got one more here that I'll ask out of this very long survey. If anyone wants to look it up, there's plenty of questions you can go through. Okay, our last one is who is the most underrated player in the league?
Well, I can I'll give you a couple off the top of my head here. Domantas Sabonis is one.
That's a good one.
Yep.
I mean, people don't really understand how good he is around the league. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I know he's on a bad, I think that guy is moving into the upper echelon.
Yeah.
He can go get 30 on you every night. Yep. And they're just a couple of pieces away from being pretty darn scary.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I don't know who's underrated right now. It's hard for me to think of a name. Sabonis is a perfect name for that, because I feel like historically he didn't get his credit really in Indiana a ton either. I don't know, maybe Markkanen, just for what he's been able to do in Utah. And he's only had 1 year on the stage where he's really shown that he is this guy, but he probably should be in the All-Star conversation. And I would imagine he doesn't come close to it, but maybe I'll be proven wrong on that. But he's been nearly as good as any other big man in the league so far.
Yeah, I would have definitely said Markkanen on that one. Sabonis was tied for 3rd with Brook Lopez. Gilgeous-Alexander was second, and the number 1. I don't know why it slightly perturbs me here, but the number 1 most underrated player in the league was voted Tyrese Halliburton, who I feel like has gotten all the love in the world. We're getting Tyrese Halliburton is an all-star. We have Wally Szczerbiak, who was a Knicks guy, talking crap about Tyrese Halliburton not being an all-star because of all the all-star hype around Tyrese Halliburton. But Halliburton was voted the most underrated player in the NBA this season.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I think he's got tremendous, and he deserves it. I mean, he deserves it, but he's not been underrated. He's been rated very highly. Yes. And I think, well, anyway, it is amazing about those kind of things of players that are underrated or overrated, Yeah. I mean, there's so many guys that probably, you could say deserve a little more attention for this or that. And so I don't know. I mean, it's like me, a guy that I really think is really good is Darius Garland. He didn't play particularly well against the Kings so much, but I've watched him a lot. I mean, he is really good. And, when you start talking about best points in the league, his name needs to be mentioned.
It's funny, Jerry. I just saw an article about like the top 100 players in the NBA, I think is what it was. It was published this week. Halliburton was 20th, and I think Sabonis was 27th, and like Fox was like 30. But like Halliburton was 7-8 spots above Sabonis in that regard. And to be considered a top 20 player in the league, I feel like you're pretty highly rated if you're a top 20 player in the league, written by any national media. You're pretty well rated at that point.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, so we're gonna cut to a commercial break, and we will be right back.
Sacramento Electric Supply now has stock on new and exciting Klein Tools products, from the Power Hub 1 to the KTB-500 portable power station. Sacramento Electronics has all your job site power needs. Stop by their location directly south of Costco in Rancho Cordova, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Or visit them online 24/7 at www.sacelect.com.
Okay, we are back. Tony, we're going to roll over to you for the Patreon question of the day. Why don't you go ahead and hit us with it?
Thanks, Will. On every episode of this podcast, we ask at least one question from our Kings Herald patrons. You can submit questions at patreon.com/Kings Herald or on Twitter or on the website, and we will ask it to Jerry, Will, and myself. If your question doesn't get answered on the podcast, we do record a Patreon exclusive Q&A once a month where we ask all the leftover questions. So keep submitting. If you don't hear yours, you will hear at least on the Patreon show. This week's question, something that I was talking about today, so I'm just curious what Jerry's take on it is and will, and I wanted to ask it, so I picked this one out. This comes from Tall Skinny Ben, and there were some rumors this today, and it's been going on for a while, Jerry, maybe you heard them, but Tall Skinny Ben asks, should the Kings go after Cam Reddish? I don't think it would cost much, but it's a better option than Terrence Davis. Jerry, there were rumors today that Cam Reddish can be had for 2 second-round picks. That's the price the Knicks are charging right now, rumor, so who knows? Are you interested in Cam Reddish at all?
Well, I'm interested. I think there's some talent there. He's hasn't fit where he's been the last couple of teams. So that should concern you a little bit. And then if it's 2 second-round picks, I think that'd be a pretty good option to take if that's the case, and especially if it could be, 1 second-round pick down the road. I think there's a chance that a guy like that could help this team. But and as to the questioner, I think he's a better option than Terrence Davis. Although, having said that, he might not be better. But,
might not.
There's a chance he wouldn't. He hadn't played better this year necessarily. So, but I think with his youth and size and length, it might be something the Kings could use. And certainly that price is nothing.
Will, do you have any strong positions on Cam Reddish or the price it seems to cost to get him right now?
Yeah, I think we were all pretty upset when the Knicks got Cam Reddish last season for seemingly I think it was Solomon Hill and a protected first-round pick, and they sent away Kevin. It was just a bunch of trash for trash plus Cam Reddish, and we were all kind of this is the move Monty McNair should be making. It cost almost nothing to get him, and then Tom Thibodeau has done nothing with Cam Reddish in the time since then, or Cam Reddish has not earned Tom Thibodeau's respect in that time, even though that was something that we all kind of expected. If it costs 2 second-round picks and that's the asking price, if that's the leaked price, I assume you could probably get them for a really nice second-round pick, a single one. The Kings I think they have multiple second-round picks over the next couple of years. And so, sure, take a flyer. I mean, if you have a 53rd pick somewhere down the road, or if you have some championship contenders second-round pick, throw a couple of them that way. Maybe not this year, but maybe the next couple of years, toss a second-round pick that is not going to be worth anything at him and take a flyer on him. I have no problem with it. I mean, I don't think a guy of his caliber can really ruin chemistry at this point. I think the Kings are pretty set in their core, and you're just kind of taking a swing at a fence for a guy who could wiggle his way into that core of players. But yeah, he's obviously not done much in New York. He hadn't done much in Atlanta, even though he's a very talented person. So sure, take a swing at him, see what happens.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. I don't know if Cam Reddish is good. I know I like the idea of a 6'8" forward who is 23 years old at the cost of 2 second-round picks. And that's all I can really say. Yeah. I mean, I have no idea if he's a good player or not. I like his raw measurables. And I don't know. I mean, Kevin Huerter played with him in Atlanta, so maybe he has some insight there too on whether this guy is good from a chemistry fit or things like that. So hopefully there'd be no issues there. But I do like that cost, and I think he's an interesting young player. And I guess we'll see what team tries him next, because it clearly didn't work in New York.
Yeah, the one thing on him in Atlanta, as I understood it, and I could be wrong, but it wasn't that they didn't think he could play, because he played at times extremely well, but they just had too many guys. Yeah. They had too many guys that at least as far as Coach McMillan thought, that he was trying to play his best guys, and at that time Cam wasn't one of them. And and also Cam wanted to play more, obviously. And so, yeah, I think it's to me, for a couple of seconds, I mean, you're not expecting the next Laurie Marketing kind of thing, but it's cheap price to pay to get a good look. That's what I say. And like I say, there's a reason he was drafted where he was. And there's a reason where he's had some moments where it looked like he was a real talent. And there's also a reason why he's been a disappointment. So, and that's what if you can find out that for cheap, then which I think a couple of seconds, especially if you could either a low one or spread them out, could be a really good chance to maybe improve your team for low cost.
Yeah, I think what the Kings traded for Josh Jackson last year. I think I'd be slightly more excited for Cam Reddish than I was for Josh Jackson. But Josh Jackson was a top 5 pick. He was, he had some moments in Detroit at one point or another. It was like, okay, let's kick the tires on this guy. Maybe it works out, and that's worth a second round pick at some point. Okay, Jerry, we're gonna roll over to you for the Reynolds wrap up. What do you got for us today, Jerry?
Well, here's a thought. This is a little different, but the college football playoff, they want to go to 12. Now, here's my thoughts: is we need, if that's the case, then they ought to have 8 from the SEC automatically, and then just spread out the other 4 because if you can't tell the difference by now, so I mean, it's just one of those things. It's like, I was pulling for TCU and hoped they could win. I knew they wouldn't, but I thought they'd play a good game, and it was just men playing against boys, and that's all you could say to that. And I mean, and then my second thing, and I really enjoyed football. I don't know squat, but then again, a lot of people that are supposed to be experts don't either. But the old deal is like Bennett, the quarterback for Georgia. They're saying, well, I don't think he'll get drafted, and I'm thinking, okay. They say, well, he's too little. He's this. I said, well, okay. Now, but the first round pick is going to be Trace Young or Bryce Young from Alabama, who's about the same size. And I'm thinking, now wait a minute, and really, just watching Purdy for San Francisco, and you're thinking, now wait a minute here, guys. And over the years, I mean, they've missed on quarterbacks, forever. I mean, missed badly. Of course, Brady being the classic case, the 6th round pick. Kurt Warner wasn't drafted. Joe Montana was the 3rd round pick. Brett Favre was a 2nd round pick. Johnny Unitas wasn't drafted. I mean, so I mean, it's just one of those things that you think, geez, just being a quarterback on 2-time national champion ought to get you drafted somewhere in the top 7 rounds. And if he's too little and can't do it, that's fine. But then again, they always say, and then on the next breath is, Bryce Young, I think he's probably better, but I don't think he's that much better. So
Jerry, it was good of you to say that it was men against boys, seeing as how Stetson Bennett is 25 years old as a starting quarterback for that team. That is a full grown man at that point.
Well, and we're going to see more of that as we go, I think, in basketball and football, all with the transfer portal. Guys, as long as they've got some eligibility left, until if they can't play pro, they're going to play. And I think for which is that good for the college sports? I don't know. I think it's fairer than it used to be. If coaches can leave, players ought to have the same option now. Whether it should be, I get a transfer because you yelled at me, or you wouldn't, or you took me out of the game after I missed 8 straight shots or something. I mean, I'm going to transfer, that sort of thing. So anyway, that's my get off my lawn thing for the day. Is that is just, I mean, to think that the SEC isn't by far the dominant conference in football is just foolish at this point. Sure. And then it's not to say Ohio State might win one year, or maybe someday USC will be back. But in the meantime, look at Georgia and Alabama and Florida and LSU, and don't be surprised, Tennessee, if your champion isn't coming from one of those pretty much regular basis.
Well, for all of us here at the Kings Herald, I want to thank you guys for listening to another episode. We will be back in 2 weeks. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.